Robert Kiyosaki said that the world changed on August 15, 1971. When he looked at the world, he wondered why it was so messed up, why there was such a big gap between the rich and the poor, and why real estate was in a bubble. A lot of it can be traced back to 50 years ago. FDR also started Social Security when he took the dollar off the gold standard in 1933. Back then, FDR really messed up the economy, so he couldn't own gold and we didn't even know what gold was. And that made a big difference in his life. So, let him ask this question to get an idea of what's going on in the economy right now. How can the CEO of a company borrow money just to check the price of their stocks? That is wrong. Why are prices for homes so high? If you want to know why the rich are getting richer, look at what's happening to the poor middle class. Our cash is not real. That's what's wrong, and right now, anyone who saves money is a loser, and because they print it over and over. Nixon closed the gold window on August 15, 1971. When he did it, he said it was only temporary, but it's been 50 years and it still hasn't opened back up. What you said about FDR in 1933 is true, because that's when it became illegal for Americans to own gold money. So Americans couldn't take their Federal Reserve notes back to the Federal Reserve and exchange them for gold dollars. They could only talk about deals and pass around Federal Reserve notes. But if you weren't an American and lived outside of the US, you could still take your Federal Reserve notes to the Federal Reserve and get the gold the notes said they would pay. In the 1960s and 1970s, we ran large deficits to pay for the Vietnam War. We had guns and butter, but we didn't pay for it either. So we ran large deficits and the Fed monetized them with QE. So QE monetized government expenditures. We didn't have enough gold and foreign creditors were skeptical. They brought Federal Reserve notes to the gold window to buy gold. We didn't have enough, so we made do. We defaulted because Federal Reserve notes were gold promises. Because the US government defaulted heavily in 1971, anyone who claims otherwise is mistaken. We've been using fiat money since then. He believes that the system is collapsing. He believes the dollar will soon collapse and the world will return to the gold standard. Gold is cash. Robert Kiyosaki's father educated him about gold. His father was one of the few who testified against abandoning the gold standard before it was done. His father was the only one who stated we'd have lots of inflation if we abandoned the gold standard. All of the other government witnesses, including the then Secretary of the Treasury and the then head of the Federal Reserve, claimed if we went off the gold standard, gold's price would collapse. They thought the dollar supported gold, so they talked about how amazing the economy would be if we removed the gold standard. His father was the only one who testified and got it right because he predicted what would happen in the 1970s, and his prediction came true. The Fed should have withdrawn money from circulation after COVID to raise interest rates. Because of COVID's supply problem, people left their employment and companies closed. Homebodies stayed put, ineffective. No goods were made. No services meant less to buy. The Fed needed to reduce the money supply so it fell steadily. The reverse happened. They printed lots of money and gave it to everyone. Demand rose as supply fell. Because going back to gold would mean abandoning the currency. If the dollar lost its reserve status, its value on international exchanges would plummet. We can do this because the world accepts cash. If they return to a gold standard, they won't accept dollars for their goods. Therefore, we will have to give them gold or make goods since we can't lack manufacturing. The currency will fall and Americans will find all of their favorite things on store shelves. We can't afford them, therefore they'll all disappear. For many countries outside of the US, it won't make that much of a difference because they don't have reserve currencies. For example, if you live in New Zealand, the New Zealand dollar isn't a reserve currency. If you want to bring something in, you have to send something out. But for America, this is a big change because we used to be able to print dollars, but now we can't print gold and have to earn it like everyone else. This is a big deal for Americans, but it's also a big deal for people who have money saved and want to retire. Get out of paper and into foreign stocks, real estate, gold, and silver. These are real things that have real value and can make real money. In 2024, the US will make a Fed coin. They want the Fed to print money so that everyone on Main Street can get rich. But printing money doesn't make people rich, it just makes prices go up. Even though a stock market meltdown is a possibility, baby boomers have additional concerns. Even worse would be if the stock market did not drop, because only a decline in the dollar will prevent the stock market from plummeting. The baby boomer generation is probably doomed regardless of the outcome, unless they act now and overhaul their financial portfolios in preparation for both a stock market crash and a dollar meltdown. The dollar's collapse is worse. The stock market goes up when the dollar crashes, but it doesn't matter what it went up because the value goes down anyway. Go look at a chart of the stock market in Zimbabwe. The market never went down, it always went up. When prices go up, being a creditor is the worst thing you can do. So you want to borrow money. When there is deflation, it's good to be a creditor because the money's value goes up, and if the borrower doesn't pay back the loan, you get their assets. If you take out a loan to buy a piece of property and things go wrong and you can't pay back the loan, the lender will take the property. You took out a loan for money that actually had value, and you repaid it with money that barely had any value at all. However, the problem for a lot of people who wind up buying their property outright is that they don't know what to do in the event that something goes wrong. There will be an increase in the expenditures associated with maintenance. Invest in precious metals like gold and silver and build up your assets. Real assets that are located outside of the United States and provide decent dividends. During an inflationary period of time, you want to hold companies that are able to rapidly pass on their higher costs to their customers in the form of higher pricing. Therefore, you want to establish enterprises in which you are confident that the customer would pay a great price. Because there are some kinds of businesses in which raising your prices will cause you to lose clients if and when you do it. People have certain needs, and they are going to make purchases based on their necessities before they make their purchase based on their desires. If the items they require become too expensive, they will have little choice but to forego some of the things that are on their wish list. Therefore, it is in your best interest to own businesses that are engaged in the business of providing essential goods and services to consumers, as this will give you the most opportunity to increase prices while still retaining a substantial portion of your customers. You need these inflation hedges. You need to get out of the dollar, and you need to understand the magnitude of the change that is about to take place and the profound impact it is going to have on the standard of living in the United States. You need these inflation hedges. You need to get out of the dollar. You need to understand the magnitude of the change that is about to take place. The worst thing about this crisis is that it is happening at a time when support for capitalism is at an all-time low and support for socialism is at an all-time high. He thinks that a lot of people will look at the financial end of the world and say that it's all because of capitalism. He thinks that this is going to happen. They will say that the rich are to blame for what is going on. They will say that the bankers were the ones to blame. They will say that the solution is for the government to take over everything and make it their responsibility. It is imperative that the government intervene and take control of the situation. The government should take over the management of all businesses. The government is responsible for providing employment opportunities and carrying out all of these other duties. It is therefore not only extremely risky, but also extremely risky to be an investment at this time. But it is also extremely risky to be an American at this time. You need to come up with an additional plan to keep yourself safe. What Robert Kiyosaki says, in your opinion, is helpful? If this is the case, we would appreciate if you could share your ideas by leaving a comment on this video. We hope that this provides you with some ideas on how to better manage your finances.